Good evening and welcome to a new semester of small groups. This semester we're going to be studying from a book entitled Seismic Shifts, Little Things That Make a Big Difference in Your Life. A seismic shift is defined as a big change of some sort or a great change of some sort. Often in life, that's what we're looking for, a great change. Whether it's professionally, physically, financially, or spiritually, we want a drastic change in our life and we want it now. We want that extra 15 pounds gone tomorrow. We want that credit card debt to disappear overnight. We want a thriving relationship with God and all of our problems to disappear with the snap of a finger. But here's the thing. Seismic shifts are often the accumulation of many small movements that when combined together have a surprisingly significant impact. Just like the video of the dominoes falling, we want the dominoes of our life to fall. But in order for that to occur, it takes a small nudge or push of that one domino to start a chain event of all the dominoes falling. So that's what we're going to study this semester. 4 seemingly small shifts in life that lead to a seismic shift in our relationship with God. Just remember, Jesus said, without me, you can do nothing. God doesn't call us so much to do as much as he calls us to be. If any man be in Christ, why not be in his presence? Because we know that in his presence is fullness of joy, and at his right hand are pleasures forevermore.
Our fast-paced world is all about producing and production, isn't it? It is very, very common to hear people talk about how busy they are, how much work they're doing, and just how tired they are. We are busy with life, busy with family, busy with work, hobbies, church, ministries. Being busy doing can really beat us up. Everyone is burned out and have thoughts of throwing their hands up. Why? In our world, what we do determines our worth. This modern philosophy is learned by our children at a very young age, and this only becomes more apparent as we age and become more involved in living out our lives. Life for many becomes a daily journey of trying to do things to finally feel valuable enough. Let's think about this. We are scored as soon as we are born. We are weighed, measured, the color of our skin evaluated, and we're given what's called an APGAR score. Scoring, rating, sizing up, and comparing begins as we take our first breath. The doctor places the baby on a score chart, or at least their weight, their height, on a score chart, and declares whether they are average, above average, below average, or off the chart. Our little G baby Madeline was in the 55th percentile in her weight, so we thought, not too big, not too small, she's average. But then her poor little head, big head, was in the 98th percentile. The scoring continues on and allows us as we start and follows us as we start school. Our performance makes a difference and determines our worth in the world. If we aren't careful, we can spend our valuable life's time trying to live up to the world's standards and prove our worth. Remember, gold will be used to make streets in heaven. Jesus is not impressed by those things. He cares about what we do in the context of who we are and who we are becoming. We many times can't see the forest for the trees, so we accept the world's opinions as to what indicates value and worth. The report cards, the bank balances, psychological assessments, we accept those things as final. God sees it differently. When he looks down at us from his vantage point, he wants us to look back up to him and see ourselves as he sees us. A seismic shift that will allow us to see life as God sees it is going from doing life to being in his presence and will. That's the lesson we want to grasp a hold of tonight. Let's move from doing to being. When we do this, life will take new meaning and it will overflow with joy and peace. How valuable are we to God? Think about it. He gave everything for us. God sees us as beloved, precious children. He loves us more than we can imagine and more than our hearts can contain. The perception of others can have a huge impact on how we think of ourselves. The perceptions given to us and accepted by us from others can cause us to believe a lie. It can cause us to believe we have arrived or that we will never arrive. And we alter our behaviors to fit those perceptions. It's a choice we make.
And just as a little nudge of one domino can begin a chain reaction, little changes in our relationship with God can lead to a radical transformation in our lives. The world defines who we are by what we do, but God defines us by who we are in Him. And it's that identity in God that should drive what we do. Being and doing are interrelated, but the biblical order is critical. What we do should flow out of who we are in Him and not the other way around. We get so caught up in doing because we worry about what other people are thinking about us, and it becomes a driving force in our lives. Some of us are so driven to accomplish things that we don't even enjoy the journey. Worse, we come to the end of ourselves, to the end of our intellect, to the end of our charisma, our accumulated knowledge, our force of personality, our strength, and we realize that these things are not enough to accomplish what we need to accomplish in life. What we do has deserted us, and the identity that comes from what we do is no longer who we are. Career changes, layoffs, health issues, hurts in life, all have a way of perplexing us if our identity is derived from what we do and not who we are. Life doesn't consist in the abundance of what a person possesses. In Luke chapter 12, verses 16 through 21, Jesus shares a parable that is very appropriate for our lesson tonight. So let me read it to us. Then he spake a parable to them, saying, the ground of a certain rich man yielded plentifully. And he thought within himself, saying, what shall I do, since I have no room to store my crops? So he said, I will do this. I will pull down my barns and build greater, and there I will store all my crops and my goods. And I will say to my soul, soul, you have many goods laid up for many years. Take your ease, eat, drink, and be merry. But God said to him, fool, this night your soul will be required of you. Then whose will those things be which you have provided? So is he who lays up treasure for himself and is not rich toward God. Getting caught up in doing cost this man his relationship with God. Shifting from doing to being may require a change in habits and patterns in our lives, but the benefits will be eternal. And here's a case in point from Joshua of the Old Testament. Joshua gets the doing versus being right. 4 scenes from the life of Joshua capture the power of moving from doing to being.
In the first scene, Joshua is present with Moses at the tent of meeting. When Moses entered this tent, the pillar of cloud would descend and stand at the entrance of the tent, and the Lord would speak with Moses. Exodus 33, verses 7 through 10. The key to the life of Joshua is revealed in Exodus chapter 33, verse 11. Thus, the Lord used to speak to Moses face to face, just as a man speaks to his friend. When Moses returned to the camp, his servant Joshua, the son of Nun, a young man, would not depart from the tent. Joshua remained in the tent of meeting because he had a passion to know and be with God.
And this personal knowledge of God served him well in the second scene, where he and Caleb were 2 of the 12 spies who were sent out from Kadesh to view the land of Canaan. Although all 12 spies saw the same things, 10 of them interpreted it from a human perspective and were overwhelmed by the size of the enemy and the number of the people. Only Joshua and Caleb saw the opposition through a divine perspective, and they encouraged the people to trust the Lord. Here's what they said: only do not rebel against the Lord, and don't fear the people of the land, for they will be our prey. Their protection has been removed from them, and the Lord is with us. Do not fear them. Being in the presence of God produced a proper perspective for Joshua and Caleb. It allowed them to accomplish what God had given them to do. In doing that, we understand we are more than conquerors in spite of what we face. Tragically, the people believed the fearful conclusions of the majority of the spies, and they were co-signed to wander in the wilderness. For 38 years, they literally killed time until that generation of the Exodus had perished in the wilderness.
In the third scene, the Lord prepares Joshua to lead the generation of the conquest into the land of Canaan. In Joshua 1, verses 1 through 9, the Lord encourages him to be a courageous and obedient man of the word who meditates on it day and night. Because Joshua knew and loved God and renewed his mind with the book of God's law, Joshua was able to successfully lead Israel in the conquest of the promised land. Even when a setback came at Ai and Israel was defeated in a battle they should have easily won, by being in tune with God, Joshua was able to find out what the source of the defeat was and eradicate it. Thus, their setback became a setup for a comeback. By being in tune with God, we realize that failure does not have to be final.
Yes, and in the fourth scene, Joshua is nearing the end of his life, and he gathers all of Israel together, and he exhorts the people of Israel to serve the Lord and to flee from idols. And he concludes his exhortation with his now famous stance from Joshua 24 and 15. As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. One writer put it this way when he said, because Joshua spent more time being in the presence of God than a friend to others, he avoided the pitfall of becoming enslaved to unproductive activity. But because he understood the necessity of intimacy over activity, his activity energized anything and everything that he put his hands to and that he could have imagined. It allowed him to do more than he could have imagined.
Thank you, Lord. There is great value associated with going from doing to being. Joshua, because of his time spent being in the presence of God, was able to maintain the following three things. Number one, a proper perspective when confronted with a problem bigger than himself. Number two, Joshua was able to complete the task God gave him to do, even in overcoming defeat and failure. Number three, this allowed him to come to the end of his life still maintaining a vibrant and strong relationship with God. Who of us doesn't want to end well? The author of Seismic Shifts states, from the cradle to the grave, this world has signposts, and the message is the same. Perform, measure up, be the winner, succeed. The world's values is fleeting and will never last. Remember, we cannot take any of what this world has to offer with us. And if our lives end before the world does, this world will just keep on ticking and will not miss us for long. It will use us up and forget about us. God has signposts too. His signpost lets us know that we have true value with him, value that is eternal. His love for us is not based on what we do. Thank you for being in small group tonight. Now let's enjoy discussion with our groups.